And this is Cohort in Progress, episode 3. I think it's 3.
Yay! Yes.
We've had some amazing episodes before, so if you want to learn about enshittification, go check out the Lynn Anderson one.
Yes.
But today we've got a really nice guest in AJ. I'm Kevin Burgess. I do doctoral studies. Right now I'm learning about AI and AI awareness in small business.
And I'm Ashwini Bhaskar. I'm doing my doctoral studies around entrepreneurship. And today we have a wonderful guest in Ajay Raju, who is also a Temple graduate and does a lot of work around community. We are looking forward to talking to him about AI, about the stuff that he does around the community in Philadelphia. So let's get started.
AJ, what's your go-to podcast?
I don't really have a podcast that I listen to, but I do like Acquired. Someone turned me on to Acquired podcast about companies, and they do a great job talking about, the formation, the history, much more of a richer conversation about companies and where they are, the founders and the industry and the macro picture of the sector itself. I think they're wonderful. Yeah, I think it's a must for any business student, any person in the business world. Acquired podcast.
That's the one?
Yeah.
What's the format? How do they run
Just
it?
two guys, Silicon
guys
Valley, just
chatting.
talking about it, but the amount of research that they do
Okay.
on the companies and their ability to tell stories in such vivid fashion that draws you in. It doesn't seem academic at all. It just is much more of a, that's how documentaries have become back in the 80s. I mean, documentaries were forced on you. It was like eating kale. But today, documentaries are like eating kale, which is much more tasty, and the chefs are creative, and documentaries are even more enriching than even movies. But Acquired is, imagine having a great conversation or learning a business school at Wharton or Temple or Harvard, but every second of it, you're engaged.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan.
They're not a guest-driven show. It's just two
Well,
guys.
they're guest-driven. No, they are.
They are.
They sometimes bring people in. Occasionally, usually it's just the two guys talking. Sometimes they bring in Jensen Wang or people like that. It's really at the high level, yeah.
So, Kevin, will it be fair to maybe begin with Ajay? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
I came to the country in 1983. I was Mowgli, dropped in a jungle of Irish and Polish immigrants in Northeast Philadelphia. I was probably the only ink spot on a blank page. It's important because my immigrant experience probably shapes who I am, and everything, all the work that we do and the businesses and everything else is sort of tied to that. That was probably an important moment in our lives, my family and myself. Northeast Philly, unlike any other neighborhood in 1983 where I was just like Leave It to Beaver. Those who are older will remember the show. It was what you would consider to be an ideal America. The front doors were always open. The adults would mentor young people. You had, gangs, not in a bad sense, but a bunch of friends hanging out, groups walking together. Yeah. We would call ourselves various names from that book, Outsiders. So it was really, we thought we were a gang, but wholesome kids. It was a wholesome neighborhood. And it was monolithic, so it was not 32 seagulls fighting for a French fry. It was much more of every parent is a mentor.
Right.
So I grew up early years in that
kind of
marinating in that warmth of a community.
Right.
So my perception of what America is different than probably 90% of other immigrants, maybe. I don't know. But that shaped how I view America, the opportunities, maybe even my ideology, perhaps, and who I am, and also sense of responsibility. I know that I was carried. I think I've always walked on the sunny side of the street, so part of the reason why I know that many of the things that I enjoy come from the fact that even on rainy days, people run to my side with umbrellas. So I've been pretty lucky. It's been a very lucky journey in America.
You really embody the whole, takes a village to raise a child, right?
It certainly was. I mean, we had a neighbor that taught my brother how to ride a bike. He was also, would always take me to Colonel Doherty because he was on his way to work. Poor guy always was late because I would still be fussing with my hair while I would hear one honk, two honk. Yet when I would get in the car, there was no admonition, there was no like yelling. It was just
I mean, it's still looking good.
you can buy it at Target.
Not me.
But it's but yeah, I grew up. I grew up the right way. I think with great mentors, great community, sense of optimism, being told positive things, whether it was deserved or earned or not, didn't matter. I actually started believing it at some point.
Right, right.
Yeah, you
There's
should.
something similar experience as well. I mean, I'm an immigrant as well. I came in the country in '99,
Mhm.
and unlike most of the I think people who come from India, I didn't come studying here. I came working for PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I had something similar experience. Really, it was great. It was
Yeah,
great.
what was yours?
Well, my experience. Everybody was so helpful. I started my PricewaterhouseCooper, job here, right here in Philadelphia. And one of the things, my wife also actually went to Temple, but she went to Temple 1986, right? So she probably kind of grew up in the kind of community
Probably,
that you're talking
yeah,
about,
yeah, yeah.
right? But I had a wonderful, wonderful experience. After about 6 months in PwC, I quit and joined a startup. In
Okay.
those days, startups were not as ubiquitous, if you will. But and then I kind of took an exit 5 years down the road, like the true American dream, if you will, and then joined Accenture and IBM and so on and so forth. So I had a great immigrant experience,
Hmm.
and I do feel I agree with you, Ajay. I feel that sense of responsibility and sense of giving back to the community, and that's what I have been doing for the last 5 years,
Yeah.
right? To give back to the community that you live in.
I definitely think the mindset of America pre 9/11,
Right.
uh, pre pandemic was different.
Yeah, there's no
Um,
question.
uh, and especially those of us who are older remember a different America.
Yeah.
May not have been a fair America, may not be, maybe the rose tinted glasses and, steeped in nostalgia, whatever they may be. But, I sometimes have to be careful because my experience is not everyone's experience.
Right.
But I have to be truthful that my experience was. But there is a pressure at this point to sort of spin your memory through the lens of the aperture of everybody
Well,
else's. I'm not saying that everybody had the same experience. We just happened to be very lucky.
I mean, I
And
think I had a really similar experience. I'm a white guy and born and raised in America. I have so many similarities. No, I'm just
yeah,
kidding. Way different experience than you. Like, I didn't have from a young age. Those weren't like the morals surrounding me, right? Like rose-colored glasses were, I think, my upbringing a little bit more. And so now, as I get older, I start realizing the importance of giving back. I don't think that importance was kind of there from the start,
Right. Right.
right? And I don't know if that's a place from just pure luxury is probably what it is, or
well, I,
privilege, but
I I don't know. I mean, I think if you look at, I don't know the stats. You guys are the um, research experts, but if I had to make a guess,
yeah,
say name a country that is most charitable, that volunteers more, that sends its young men and women uh, into danger, not just to protect obviously our economic interests and our geopolitical reasons, but also in some cases to help those in need, whether it's through our USAID dollars or
mhm,
whatever the reasons are. I would venture both from a government standpoint as well as the little guy writing a check that they probably can't afford, but that the person that volunteers, we have a rich history
Right.
of locals volunteering that I don't find in a lot of countries.
really,
I think we are tough on ourselves as we should be. We're not perfect, but as a society, it's tough to find. And I come from another great country, born and raised until 13 in India. That is also a great civilization and great culture. But so I'm blessed with two unique cultures. But America is unique in that sense, and I know that there is so much tension about where we are today, and there's so much anxiety about do we lose that spirit,
mm,
and we're so polarized now.
Right.
And the lens today, the way we look at ourselves and our country and what we mean to the world and what we mean to each other, was certainly not the world that I grew up in. And it had nothing to do with being Indian, being an immigrant, being in Northeast Philadelphia versus Center City, I think it was just a time where we were less judgmental, less convinced that we are bad, and more convinced that we're not perfect, but we're in pursuit of
Perfection.
goodness.
Yeah.
Sure.
Uh,
For sure.
and I think as a country, more people probably believed in the ideals of what America stands for. I think we're less so in that sense
What do
than
you
we were.
what do you think the reason is? Because I have a lot of things that go through my head, right? And I think the richness of information would be what comes to mind.
Sure.
Like as I've gotten like as a kid, my parents would read the newspaper. You see like a new OJ Simpson on the news. Like that was
Right.
like the big thing, right? When I
Yeah.
was in like high school or something. And now, and we've talked about this on multiple shows, but I do think that the more information you get, the more unsure you are of your climate and the world around you. Or what do you think has driven that change in our society?
I've written about this. A lot of it, I think, in terms of young people. When I came, I was 13. In 1983, the most controversial show in terms of having ideological fights and all those things was Dallas, JR. And that would be the most. And you still had to wait a week before the next episode would come in.
Yeah,
There was no binging. You watched with family. It wasn't personalized viewing.
it's true.
If you went to Blockbuster, you went with family.
Right.
You couldn't just get any content. There was
You
time
had to pay.
constraint.
You had to
They
pay
had
money
breaks.
on that at the
Right.
shop,
Right.
so you had
But
to
you
read
also
the
had
back.
natural friction points where parents were involved.
Mhm.
FCC and others were geared more towards, few, and it was much more family oriented. So it gave you grace time as a young person to have a sense of optimism before pessimism killed it. Right. So you could at least develop that developmental grace, whether it's good or bad. Today, you know, any kid with an iPhone can watch pornographic material, which is available on your phone, to binge watch HBO, sort of these shows that
Platforms
there are
available.
platforms like Succession, Game of Thrones, highly complicated, where there are no good and bad, but instead complicated
Mhm.
sets. You had West Wing, where even though the politicians were not great, you had expectation that they were generally good. They just were morally maybe flawed here or there,
Right.
as opposed to the what's that show? It's Kevin Spacey,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
House of
the
Cards.
House of Cards,
Mhm.
Yeah, House of
where
Cards.
every character is bad,
Yeah.
and anybody who is not bad is a sucker waiting
Yeah.
to be fooled. So the
Cool.
mindset of the optimism world, which was only what we were fed,
Yeah.
and we had time to sort of develop a sense of optimism, sense of wonder, not know too much. To exactly to your point,
Mhm.
now we see behind every curtain.
Yeah.
We see all the Machiavellian aspects. So it's hard to trust people anymore because of that, because we've been mentally conditioned to now be a bit more skeptical of
Yeah,
each
and you
other.
were talking about it like growing up, and I think that's to me the what we need to be cautious about.
That's
Like
the
as our children just
formative years.
yeah, it's like you're getting formative years of not being bored. I think
Yeah. But, there's pluses to that too. If you have a young kid, 10-year-old kid, and understands the Machiavellian natures of the succession family, right? And you see how every character has good and bad, well, that trains you to a world where business is not
Right.
black and white.
Right.
So you develop those things. The question really is, Jensen Wong was asked this question recently about, if you were to relive your 20s, would you relive them in the 1980s when he was 20 or now? And he picked
Hmm.
1980s because he said those were happier times,
Simpler times for sure.
happier and simpler times. Because what he said is, if he knows now how hard it
Right.
would be to create an NVIDIA, how hard it would be to fail, he would have never tried. He built NVIDIA because he didn't know how difficult it was going to be,
Yeah.
that he would fail. Like if he had seen behind the curtains, he would have never tried in the first place. So
Wow.
that sense of optimism that gets snuffed out by too much knowledge is probably what. So I think you're spot on when you say we know too much.
Right.
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
It strikes me that there's one common thread between the three of us. Temple University.
Yeah.
So what did you do at Ajay? What brought you into Temple University?
There was
What do you
only
do
one school
after?
I applied to.
Okay. Really?
It was Temple
Okay.
because I was an immigrant son. As you know, Indian culture, the oldest son, you're responsible for the family,
Sure.
and
Sure, sure.
so my parents were here. There was no other thought. I would only apply to Temple. I thought back then you couldn't apply to Penn because my parents couldn't afford it. Didn't
Right.
realize it was scholarship actually, but I'm best decision. I went to Temple as an
Which year was
undergrad.
that, Ajay?
So 1992 is when I graduated
Okay.
undergrad. 96 I graduated law school. So I'm a dual Temple degree,
Oh, great.
undergrad and law school.
Wow. Super.
I'm a big believer in Temple and the education that Temple provides. Even beyond the education, Temple Hospital is the de facto public hospital we don't have government hospitals in Philadelphia, but Temple does the heavy lifting of serving as a government hospital essentially.
Same.
So it was created for the kinds of families that I grew up with. It was created for for those who are working but then come back, and so
Right.
it has a certain zeitgeist that I didn't know that connected with me as a kid, but I think it was an ideal school for me to go to.
Super.
Yeah.
Super. I'm glad that we all
We
ended up
got the common red.
pure.
Did you
Yes.
guys
Yeah.
also go undergrad, all of it, Temple, or?
No, I know your wife is a Temple
Yes, she's Temple
doctor,
masters
master and
and
PhD.
PhD, and she did work at the Temple Hospital. She's a pharmacist,
Got it.
right? So she actually did. I've heard so many stories about that.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, she used to work there, and she'll be like, all gunshot wound, and all kind of people will show up,
Yeah.
right? And it was a
Well,
pretty interesting time.
it's serving also. It's in the heart of North Philadelphia, the main campus, and it has always been an anchor institution, not just at the academic level and the sort of business level and others, but also for the community.
Yeah.
It is anchored, steeped
Right.
in the community.
Right. And I did
And
go
our good
through.
friend John Fry now
Yes, yes, the president.
He's the
is
guy.
overseeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And I was going through your background. Tell us a little bit about what you ended up doing after. And I know you have a couple of founders. You sit in a bunch of boards, and you're doing something interesting. Tell us a little bit about that, Ajay.
Well, I mean, I'm a lawyer by training, entrepreneur by choice, but uh, I practiced law starting in 1996 at various large law firms. Typical story. Became a partner, got into firm management and leadership, and um, so that was part of my one side of the world. Um, but around, I would say, 20, 2008 or so, um, I created also a consulting platform while I was a lawyer, leading
Mhm.
a firm. And then very quickly started making investments, and that eventually became a private equity and a venture side. You wonder, why would a lawyer want to do all of those things? It really started because of clients. We quickly realized it earlier on that there's a difference between a lawyer and counsel.
Right.
Lawyer is technically sound. They provide a specific estate law or
Service.
litigation,
Mhm.
and they're like podiatrists or
Sure.
cardiologists, etc. But then if you have a health problem, sometimes you don't call a doctor. You call somebody you trust
Trust.
with
Right.
your health. It could
Right.
be a mom, it could be a neighbor, it could be a CEO of a health system saying, "Who do I go to?"
Right.
And
Chat
counsel
GPT.
now, now
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT
Right.
or Claude,
Yeah.
but that becomes your
Trusted
counsel,
advisor.
trusted advisor, what I would call AC Cowlin riding the white Bronco. If you're OJ Simpson
Yeah.
in the back, who do you call?
Yeah.
And the emergency or good things. And eventually, when you become that advisor as a counselor, as opposed to a lawyer, you quickly realize problems don't or opportunities don't come in as a legal opportunity or problem. They come in as an opportunity. It's a marketing opportunity. It could be a PR crisis. It could be a litigation issue. It could be a purchase issue. It could be a lobbying issue. It could be a connection issue.
Sure.
So while we were doing this informally, little by little, we realized the people that we're working with, whether it's consulting, whether it was capital raising, somebody who was really good at it, I would then support, and then that slowly became our platform where I was the common element among all of this. So today we have 2 and 5 Capital. So one line of our business is our fee equity,
Okay.
and then there are fee-for-services
Right.
businesses. So from movie production to consulting to embedded executives to private equity, and we used to be venture, but there are 18 companies in the biotech space that are housed in our private equity structure. We have still a law practice that manages about 35 million in legal spend for both traditional clients where I don't have an ownership and companies in which I either have ownership or one of our venture or private equity has an ownership.
Oh,
So it has organically grown. Um, I'm an expert on none of those services anymore, but I am the common link. But
Yeah.
in each of those platforms, I'm not saying this out of um, bias, but I think you can objectively say the people who run each of those platforms are the best uh, on that field in that field. Not just locally, but nationally or globally. And that's been what we've been doing on the business side,
wonderful.
which evolved organically, slowly, but now it's become, you know, something
You
substantial.
could say it's germinated.
It has germinated,
Ah,
hasn't it?
should we talk about that? The Germination Project?
Germination
I want to
Project
hear
is
all
not a
about it.
business. It's not a business, but in 2014, we launched a couple of things. Larry Platt and I created the Philadelphia Citizen, and at the same time, we also announced another initiative called the Germination Project. Germination Project, which is sort of a baby of mine, um, it was a recognition that Philadelphia has been going through an 80-year blight. If you look at Philadelphia in our history, the code of conduct for the modern world was written here, the Constitution,
Right.
and and then you look at public works. We were the lead. The rest of the country looked at our model
Were
for
we?
absolutely public works, any parks, everything. We were it.
Hmm.
And then you look at industrial revolution. We were the lead,
Sure.
manufacturing and others. And then post-industrial malaise hit us like other cities like Baltimore and Detroit and others. So Philadelphia has been gradually, we're much better than many great cities. But if you look at child poverty, if you look at, many of our neighbors who don't enjoy the same things that handful of us are on the top of the pyramid enjoy, it has been either steady or down. And why is that? Because the same things that made us so great back in the old days, where we were the city of furs, internet started here, but our soil was not fertile enough. It had to go to Silicon Valley. Biotech should have been growing here, but instead it went to
Awesome.
Boston and other
Hmm.
places. So we don't have a history in the past 80 years of pure leadership in any of the sectors. If you think about today, if you had to say, what are the most cutting edge industries of the future? One can say it's quantum computing,
Hmm.
distributed financing, decentralized financing. It would be climate science, robotics, biotech, tech bio, all of those things that are driving the industries of the future where few cities are dominating.
Right.
Handful of cities. Shenzhen, 5 or 6 cities in China, Singapore, a few cities in Denmark, and then, of course, Boston, Silicon
Sure.
Valley, Seattle, etc. Philadelphia doesn't fall in that category. Maybe in biotech now because of Penn Medicine. And what we noticed in 2014 when we launched the Germination Project is that the best and the brightest in our city don't leave Philadelphia because they want to. They have family members here. They have roots here. But if you're going to do anything, if you're a kid who just graduated from Stanford and you want to work on algorithms or language or you want to work on quantum, well, you have to go to Yale, you have to go some other place because that's where the funding is, that's where the opportunities are, that's where the cluster of companies are. So even if you want to live here,
Right.
there is nowhere to give the resume to.
Right.
Even at Comcast, you're not going to get that kind of work. You can get that work in biotech by doing research at Penn Medicine,
Sure.
which, by the way, is number one licensing revenues in biotech. So you can see we are a factory of innovation, brand new innovation. mRNA paper was written here, CRISPR was monetized here. So all these great things are coming out of Penn Medicine and CHOP, but there is no industry. Why? There is no trained labor force. There is no adequate lab space and equipment. There's certainly no capital. So the companies that start here have to be uprooted and have to go somewhere else.
Sure.
So our bet was, long-winded answer in Germination was, what if we had a 50-year bet and giving the best and the brightest people, kids, a reason to stay connected for life because they get a lifetime fellowship, and along the way remind them that they're going to be successful with or without us.
Sure.
But why not have a purpose-driven life where their collective purpose is larger than their own? And the vision that they have for this city, for both the bottom of the pyramid as well as the top pyramid, would be longer than their collective lifespan. And it's hope that that fellowship, that fraternity and sorority of these brightest people will stay connected in the long run. You know, it will benefit not just Philadelphia, but humanity. I believe in the promise of few leading many. I also believe that if few are purpose-driven and are
Right.
passionate, that have to sacrifice their selfish needs, they can still do a lot of great things. It's now 11 years into the 50-year bet,
Yeah.
and we have 190, I believe, now fellows. And this weekend, tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday is our second weekend where we're interviewing for the new batch. The 10th graders come in and they get between 15 to 20 fellows are announced each year, and they keep adding to the cohort. So that's the Germination Project.
That's
Wonderful.
amazing.
Wonderful.
What a,
I'm picking up on the fact that, there is no dearth of intellectual horsepower here in Philadelphia. We got UPenn, we have Drexel, we have Temple, but I think it's the missing ecosystem around it, I guess, right? Is the infrastructure around it, which is uh, very strong in Boston, very strong in Silicon Valley, very strong in maybe even New York. I think it's that part that is missing, I
I think
guess.
of the top tier talent. If
Right,
you're talking about who's going to do, let's say you want to create a company in quantum computing,
sure.
even if you're the smartest, technically soundest person, you still need capital. You
right,
still need a cluster of folks to do business with. And it's just easier. It's easier to shop at a mall
right,
than it
Yeah.
is to drive around, 30 minutes for
right, right,
everything on your shopping list. And Boston is a mall for biotech. It didn't happen overnight.
Right.
It happened over 80 years.
right, right,
They did an 80 years, Silicon Valley, 80 years of both federal, state, local universities, companies, big, big pharma, little biotech, all of them collaborating to create that ecosystem. Um, and I think we can do that, but it'll take a mindset shift. It is not our priority. It's not the city.
Yeah.
But we are a city of neighborhoods. We're gritty, but there are high schools that you can remember that are known for sports. They're known for gritty,
right.
etc. But
Right.
they may not be the Baldwins, the Haverfords, or the Centrals, and the Mastermans,
Yeah.
right? Because they're not academically elite. I don't think when somebody really objectively, our zeitgeist is not to be academically elite, to be the next cutting edge, even though we can be because Penn is here,
Right.
Temple's here, Drexel. We grant more degrees than any other city in the country. So the intellectual horsepower
It's
clearly is here.
definitely there.
But the
Right.
best and the brightest have to leave because, they have to live their lives too.
And I hate to ask a political question,
Sure.
but do you think state has something to do with it? Do you think state is supporting, the entrepreneurship or
Not like Massachusetts.
not
There's no
not like
record of it. I mean, if you can objectively say, I think we're, whether city council or state, many of them are friends, and I think we're big on the pep rally, but very few people show up at the game. We our Solomonic wisdom normally is to kill the goose everybody eats in one nice meal, as opposed to focusing or investing on the golden egg.
right,
Whereas Massachusetts thinks differently, Colorado thinks differently, North Carolina thinks differently. There are states that have made long-term bets,
right?
but long-term bets, as you know,
Take long
anybody that
term.
goes into college or PhD, you're going into massive debt
Oh yeah.
with the hope that you may propel forward in the future.
Correct.
That's not the typical mindset for 80 or 90% of the public.
Right.
They would not see that initial investment, the sacrifice, that delayed gratification. And it's the same thing with states. It's the same thing with the city council. Some city councils are built for long term.
Right.
China is built for 100 years.
Right.
So is now what we're doing with our AI infrastructure. Then there are certain countries that are constantly, dealing with the weather of the day as opposed to climate.
Where do you feel that the U.S. fits in globally? Like the adaptation or the long term planning versus short term planning.
I think right now we're in race with China.
For long term?
Absolutely, for the
Really?
100-year race.
Really?
Whoever wins the next 5 years, I think wins the 100 years.
Okay.
Mm.
So you
So
think the short-term drive is driving that long-term vision?
just same reasons why during the Industrial Revolution, whoever won the railroads and steam engines
Mhm.
and the steel and the production won the long term.
Yeah.
Right.
And this one is even bigger.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with internet, the first mover advantage. Once you have an Amazon and the moat that you create, once you're that big, it then compounds because you can scale easily.
Right.
Handful of companies, not nation states, not city states, but a handful of companies and individuals will control the next 100 years. And if you have them in the US, then I think we have a winning shot at determining the fate of humanity for the next 100 years. But China is a significant rival, and in some cases, they have an edge over us because it's a lot easier to manage when it's top down with, when civil liberties are not an issue. Here,
Sure.
you put 10 people in a room, you have 10 opinions.
Right.
AJ, I feel like you're in one of our classes. We have like a global,
Yes.
a global,
We could do a podcast on
yeah,
on U.S. China, the competition and the rivalry and
yeah.
how we're going to get out of it.
And on the way here, we were talking about that, and one of the conversations we're having is, there is this focus, right, U.S. versus China right now. It's a
Right.
very heavy focus.
Very heavy focus.
But I always like taking a step back and go, like, why does it matter so much? So why do you think it matters? Like you say, it drives the future. It drives like where our world is going to be. But why is us winning that race so much more important than another country winning that race for the next
Well,
100?
uh, uh, let me give you a couple of reasons. If we believe that AI, artificial intelligence, robotics, decentralized financing, if these are the kinds of climate science, if these are the industries of the future, biotech, then you want to be in the top tier. I mean, that it matters, right? It matters in terms of whether or not
Jobs
you have
or
jobs, prosperity, how you shape things. Of course, we have soft power. Hollywood has always been the soft power. Even our franchises, McDonald's, even our sports teams, even the cricket in India is played, and the leagues are being developed very much like the NFL. Our soft power has always been big. They listen to our music. They wear our
Watch our
jeans.
movies.
They watch our movies. Whereas top down, culturally, even if China wanted to be a soft power winner, they won't because it's not the same.
right.
If countries like South Korea, for example, can because it's a bottom up. It's an entrepreneurial kind of
Correct.
and whereas similar to the U.S. But you don't see that top down countries where it's national propaganda. It just
Right.
doesn't work.
Right.
So we have maintained a very large soft power advantage over China for generations. The chances are that even if the cars manufactured in China are going to be cooler, in general, you trust products that are made in America because it's we still have that brand. In terms of other competitive reasons why it matters, the AI race and robotics will be won in terms of whoever has the most energy,
Sure.
supply of energy.
Sure.
That means rare earths. 89% of rare earth supply in this
China.
is in China.
Yeah, this is why we talk about Greenland.
Well, that's so when you know that they have a gun to your head, that
Right.
the supply chain sovereignty is with China, then you have to have a hedge. And even though, it's not about liking or not liking Trump, but if you look at why we cared about Panama Canal,
Mhm.
because we wanted to make sure that the Chinese interest did not get there, and we went there. Why do we care about Greenland? Because then hedge. It's not a complete replacement of the supply chain sovereignty,
Right.
but it's
Yeah.
a hedge. Why did we go to Venezuela? Because bulk of the discounted oil, then crude that China gets, even though it's an electro state, becoming an electro state, currently they still are reliant on petrofuel. And where do they get that? Venezuela and Iran. And so why are they all connected? They're all connected because we are slowing down a competitor
Right.
that if they have access to if they have the NVIDIA chips, they have
Mhm.
older NVIDIA chips, not
Yeah.
Correct.
because if they have the same gas and the same fuel and their Ferrari and we're in a race with them, they have an advantage. And that's why it's so important to slow them down. Our geopolitics of war in Iran is not really just about the Middle East. It's really all roads lead to Beijing. This
Yeah.
is really they're all interconnected to Beijing.
It's
Right.
it's interesting. I wonder why when you look at the news, these aren't the conversations. And I find that fascinating, right? So anytime there's a canal issue, a Greenland issue, Iran issue, Feels like we're so focused, like traditional news is so focused on like the news of the day. What
Right.
happened, like what got struck or what are,
Well,
but
I don't
like
think we
not the
have news
stress.
anymore. I think it's more.
Do you
Opinions
think that's what
mostly.
it
I
is?
know we don't have Tim Russert.
Yeah.
We're
Wow.
not looking at fact. We can't even agree on facts.
Yeah. So
So
then
I
how do
don't.
we
To me,
agree on
it's
them?
not about ideology.
Yeah.
It's not about left or right. I'm looking at it just like you would do as a business
Right.
person. You would look at the data, regardless of whether you like the people or not. You just sort of say, how are they connected?
That's almost every
Trying to make
conversation we
sense.
have
You know,
now.
trying to make sense of the why.
Right.
And there usually is a why, and there's a pattern. Trump and this administration, it's either you like them or you don't like them. But even if you did not like or did not like, if you just look at the data, you sort of see that there is a strategy beyond the chaos,
Absolutely.
that it's the bull running inside the dust storm.
Mm.
But the question really is not being a fan or foe of the bull, but instead trying to figure out where the bull is heading, what the
Right.
direction is. And that's what business people do. That's what policy. Look, he's playing geopolitics in with different rules, no rules, transactional rules, very much like a construction and a real estate guy, where even our defense guarantees are based on transaction. Even our allies are transaction. You, NATO, put up 5% for your own defense, otherwise we're not going to pay for it. So everything is a transaction. Once you put that lens on, then whether you agree or not doesn't matter. Then you can simply see the pattern recognition, why they're doing it.
Right.
Then you can project out whether it's for your business or for your city, et cetera. Then you can either ride the waves or continue to crash into the waves. It doesn't matter.
Right.
This is going where it's going. And China is a formidable,
Right.
and by the way, we live in a much more dangerous time than we did before. It's a lot easier to have a military conflict with simple, cheap drones that are easy to
That's
manufacture.
true.
Is very difficult to play defense. We live in a time where cyber warfare is very cheap to infiltrate. We live at a time where our social media, bulk of it is flooded by Iranian and Qatarian or
Russians.
Chinese or Russian. Where
And
these are
we
social
have,
media bots that are telling you and dividing all of us.
and we have no idea.
We have no
If
idea.
if you ask
Yeah.
the average person, they would probably say they would be able to spot a bot, right? I bet the average person would say, like, I could do it. And then I bet if you actually studied them,
You
they
can't.
would be like, oh, for 100.
If you put 5 people in a room, you ask them to recite facts, there'll be disagreements
5
about
different-
basic facts.
Yeah.
So forget about opinions. 5. So then you go, well, who is the arbiter of deciding who's good facts or not good facts? Is it CNN? We already know what that bias is. Is it
Right.
Fox? We already know what that bias is.
Right.
Even BBC,
Of course.
which we used to think
Yeah.
was where you would go for straight news as opposed to opinion columns. Even they now are now behind the curtains. We now know that they have bias. So where do you go for straight facts?
I know.
And you can imagine if you're a young person or especially when we're so polarized. After the pandemic, I think, we went in a dark place,
Right.
into the dark recesses of our brains where we're polarized, we're spitfire, angry at each other. It's very easy to identify your tribe, be in a ghettos of grievances, live in it,
Yeah.
and then
Right.
attack the other and have your own tribe.
I think it was like 6 years ago or so. I remember. So I got some digital marketing experience under me, and the company I was working for owned like 500,000 phone numbers, and they would give you a different tailored experience and a different phone number to track you, right?
Yeah.
Like, and every time you went to that site, you'd see the same phone number, but they just knew it was you because of your internet cookies and everything. And then I started wondering, hey, like if I go to a website and if I VPN to a different city, am I
It'll
going to get a
show
different
Yep.
thing? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's one of those super simple things, but like literally in Philadelphia, you're going to get a different experience based on who you are in your profile than I am in Colorado.
Right.
Well, your
You know,
flight is going to
but-
be more expensive depending on how many times you
Right.
search it.
Yes.
Now imagine how AI is going to be even more
Just
supercharged.
amps that up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
so yeah, I hope we get back to that.
I'm a
kind
net
of-
optimist, by the way, in the long run.
Oh, yes.
But
Yes.
I think there will be a lot of turbulence,
Yeah.
job displacement, sense of purpose displacement. When technology starts doing what you do even better, there is a loss of sense of purpose that you have in the interim. I'm sure people who were in the agricultural revolution transitioned to the industrial revolution, went through that industrial to internet,
Yep.
went through that internet to big data, went through that shared services revolution. But those were all mini quakes.
Right.
This
Yeah.
is an earthquake.
There's an earthquake for
So
sure.
it kind of ties into our studies a little bit. So I got to do it
Go ahead,
because of this
please.
podcast. That was one of our assignments. It's like, is AI going to be a massive job displacer like the Industrial Revolution? More or less? What's the extent of the
Right.
impact of
Right. I mean, it
AI?
was like we are trying to compare it to a general purpose technology like electricity
Yeah.
or steam, right? When they came about, they enable a lot of other stuff, right? So AI is doing something similar. It is enabling a lot of other stuff around it. So will it follow the same path like how electricity and steam has followed, or is it different this time? So I don't know, Kevin, what you did, but I argued in the paper that I argued that AI is different
Yeah.
than electricity and steam and all the other general purpose technologies because AI is kind of sort of does things by itself. Electricity, you have to put it to use.
Yeah. It impacts a whole different level of what.
Yes, it is impacting a
Mhm.
completely different way. So, what do you think about that, Ajay? You did
I think it's so different that there is no template for it
right,
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's the first technology. We went from animal strength to machine strength,
right,
right? We had bulls and others doing the work in the fields to machines doing it, to internet where we sort of was more of an aggregation of data where everybody sort of had access, democratized data.
Right.
That was that. And then we went to the shared services where you could then actually have a guy with a car can be matched with a guy who needs a ride. That's
sure,
Uber,
Right.
Airbnb, et cetera. That's
right,
shared
Yeah.
services. And big data, all of those things. But this is the first time where technology has the ability to not only think like humans, but has the ability to think as the collective humans
Right.
and robotics intersecting at the same time, androids intersecting at the same time. So if you think about it, I am a human. I have no butt implants, no breast implants, no artificial knee or hips that I can admit
Not
to,
yet.
not yet, and no ear implants, no pacemaker.
Mm.
I am a human.
You
Then
know,
I know
if people
friends.
say that, then we have to question it, right?
Well,
So now
no,
I'm
but no,
questioning it. Maybe I'm one of those 0 to
but you're
100.
human if you have no implants.
right,
Okay, let's start with that definition. Then the second definition is the person I just described. Whether it's breast implants to you in any of those devices in your body, you're now a bionic person. You have instruments in your body, therefore you are an android.
Okay.
Okay,
Sure.
but you're a analog android.
Okay.
These are dumb systems. Whether it's
it's
pacemakers, a little smarter,
replacement,
pacemakers a little smarter, but in general, these things are not thinking for you. They
right,
are working like
They're
like a
supplementing.
machine. They're
Yeah.
like a machine. Now imagine what Neuralink is doing, what Musk is doing, where
right,
you're interfacing your brain signals with technology. And now imagine 5 years from now where Claude is
Oh,
integrated with your brain.
correct,
And now you can download data. Now imagine, do we really need this eye? If you can actually control the brain signal to the eye, you can replace it with a electronic eye that scans everything, that can
right,
actually see like an owl. You will have eventually, I believe, humans that are like Captain America, right? For warfare, you can already do if you want to. Ethically, we just don't allow it. China, I'm sure, and others are probably doing this study where if you want to have 30% faster brain power, memory, no ADHD, we will be able to genetically modify our color, our height, our strength, etc.
right.
So now imagine that world. Does that sound like steam engine? Or,
No,
or
no,
Yahoo or Microsoft, or does it sound like Uber or Airbnb?
right. No, I agree
Right.
with you
This is
completely.
superhuman. We're playing God at this point where technology is not just doing the thinking for you. Look at Claude, what it's able to do, or OpenAI in just 2 years. Everybody said, well, it hallucinates. Today, not really, not
not
much.
as
I
much.
mean,
Yeah.
it gets instantly does the work of 30 people. I mean, more than
Right.
30 people. I mean, it's 24/7, doesn't rest. Of course, it takes a lot of energy. It drains. There are
Yes.
negatives and positives to all of it, but we're entering a whole new era. Right now, we are obviously generative language phase. Soon, it would start having consciousness almost like similar to like
Yeah.
they'll have, you know, very soon. I think singularity is not that far away for us.
Well, agentic AI is, I mean, I don't know how many people are using it, but you can have 1,000 agents working for you while you're sleeping, right? I mean, I think somebody made out, maybe it was Elon Musk made the statement that we are not very far away when one person will be running $1 billion company all by himself
I think
or
that can
herself.
happen this year or
Yeah,
next year.
Right?
We're not. That's not a 5 or 10 years away.
Right,
That's a
right.
this year
yeah,
It
problem.
is a near future.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the issue isn't there is no issue of labor at all
Yep.
anymore.
Yep.
There and that's
It's different. I think it's different. I mean, I still believe there'll be enough jobs, but it'll be different.
you do see. I don't.
It'll
I
just be
don't.
different. It'll be different kind of work. I think it'll create more opportunities, different types of things that we will be able to do that we couldn't do before. It'll just be faster. So we may not do the same things. Just like Ezekiel and the Jebediah working on the fields, we're doing different type of work. Today, the same people working on the farm are sitting on a tractor doing the same thing. You don't need 30 people doing it, right? My grandfather, growing up in Kerala with agriculture, multiple people work in the fields. Now the same place, we don't have land there anymore, but I'm sure it's few people, a lot of machines, right?
Right. I mean,
My
it's like
Things will change.
somebody was saying that, Pfizer needs, 100 PhD in biochemistry. We can spin them up. We can spin them up in
yeah,
ChatGPT or in OpenAI or
yeah.
Claude or whatever. And there you are, 100 instances of PhD level, OpenAI kind of model sitting out there is going to start working for you.
It'll be
I
different
think
kind
it
of work. I
will.
think there'll be more else as purpose-driven stuff. I do agree with you that the kind of work that we think about, those jobs will go away.
Sure.
But I think there'll be different. But I do, let me take some of my thoughts back and agree with
It's
you
not
on.
allowed. You have to
No,
be stubborn.
no, on this one, I I do see a world where we will have a need for universal basic income and others because we will
Yep.
not have enough
Yes.
Work
things for
left.
work for people to do because machines and others. By the way, at that point, things will be cheaper
Right.
because it'll be easier to produce. It'll be more abundant. So therefore, it'll be a different. It will be a different world than it
I
is.
challenge that a little bit because I think this revolution is controlled by a small amount of people.
Yeah, I agree with
And
that.
because
So was the
of that,
Industrial Revolution. So was the internet. But go ahead. But this is even smaller. Go ahead.
well, how was the internet? So I get the industrial
Handful of
revolution.
people. The
If you had a
internet.
server in your house, and you host
True, it
whatever you want.
democratized. But
Yeah.
the real players,
Yeah.
if you had to sort of say oligopoly of people that control the internet revolution,
hmm
there were a handful.
Yeah.
Not all were created equal.
Yeah.
The guy
And
creating
that's
a website
true.
may think that they're an internet business person, but it was not Steve Jobs. It was
Yeah.
not Bill Gates. You go and look at the Industrial Revolution, you think about 8 or 10 people, right? There's
Right.
That's
Carnegie,
true.
et cetera. When you think about who really shaped the internet
So
revolution,
to
the
you,
big
that's
data
just not a very
revolution?
good argument then
Huh?
to say to you it's not a good argument to say, hey, AI is controlled by a small group and so it'll change like
No,
that's kind of irrelevant because in the past we've seen that.
yeah,
Yeah.
one guy created banking, maybe one guy created,
Yeah.
and use the word guy intentionally because that's what they were
Yeah,
back
but they
then.
didn't keep the data but they
Huh?
didn't control the data centers like they will now, right? They won't control like where and how the information flows, like AWS being AWS.
Rockefeller controlled 90%. He was
The
he can
That's a
resources.
good
pretty much.
point.
So you
Good
have
point.
Carnegie, monopolized steel. So you had all of that, but then it created all these spillover things, all these other jobs for
Yeah.
plumbers and
It's a
electricians
good
and others,
argument.
because each time a new innovation happens, humans being creative find new ways to create businesses. Look, there was a time when you just had a mortgage, lender, borrower. You had to put money in. And then came structured finance. You could bundle up the mortgage and
Right.
create dollars on top of dollars, and then
Right.
synthetic financing. And then you can take cars and package it together with homes, and you can create junk. We are masters in terms of creating something out of nothing, out of nothing, out of
Complexity of
nothing, out of
simple
We are
nothing.
a
things.
good adaptive
Right.
people, aren't we, in general?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, because I think about it and I wonder, does it help or hurt the small business? Ashwini is like, spent a lot of his life in small business. I love small businesses.
Oh yeah,
And so
this is the lifeblood. That's the lifeblood of
it
America,
is,
right?
it is.
I mean, 90% of our economic activity is actually created by small business. I mean, I could talk about it for hours.
Yeah. and we will, I'm sure,
Yeah.
at some point.
Yes.
And I what I've seen currently where AI is now, it's absolutely just helping small businesses tremendously.
Right.
Because
in the short term,
yeah,
but
and
it
I
also
wonder
displays them very quickly.
that's what I'm wondering
So the
if
guy
that's
who
gonna
used
happen.
to bring milk to your front door in the Leave It to Beaver era,
It's
Right.
done.
very quickly, Target and Whole Foods
Right.
and others, I mean, mom and pop stores went away
Mhm.
because malls and Home Depot and
Right.
others, because, and for, by the way, for good reasons. You know, cabbies lost to Uber. Uber drivers will lose to Waymo. It's good for the consumer, but it comes at a great cost for the families that had medallions, invested in medallions and cabs, and then eventually, who are Uber drivers today, freight drivers, all of those jobs will go away.
Right.
Well, when the largest jobs number of jobs that people have are driving, whether they're delivering Uber or they're driving freight trucks, etc. All of those jobs in the near future, near future, will be automated, driverless
Right. I mean,
cars.
the same thing is happening to now, like say, accountants, travel agents. And if you were to believe Vinod Khosla, he's predicting that PCPs, the doctors, the physical, I mean, the family care physicians,
Oh, yeah.
the family care physicians are going to go away, right? It'll be all taken over by. So the same thing has happened to travel agents. Remember, we used to have travel agents earlier. We don't have travel agents
Yeah.
You will
anymore.
have wearables. It's not that difficult to have wearables that
Keep
measure
track
to
of you.
alert, and
Yeah.
if you're having a heart event, there's no reason why your toilet cannot measure your liquids on a daily
Just
basis and
don't
give
put
you a,
AI in my bidet. Like, just I don't want any
what if
hallucinations there.
what if
You
what
draw
if
Kevin draws the line there.
what if the
Okay.
AI in a bidet tells you whether or not you have problems with sugar and cholesterol? And by the way, I got my blood test. It was pretty much the same ingredients as a potato chip: high sodium,
Yeah.
high cholesterol, and lots of toxins. So,
Uh,
but there is the good stuff when you know too much about your health.
yeah.
When you know, and when AI can predict exactly how many days you have left because if your heart is
I mean, we're getting
failing,
into Black
I don't
Mirror
know. I don't know if
episodes
you want
here.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
All right.
But
I mean,
we're living at an unprecedented era. I think anybody that tries to compare streaming to DVD and Blockbuster, it's not going to work because it doesn't have a precedent. This is
right.
so different.
Yeah,
It is.
it's tough too. So, my research is around AI
Mhm.
and specifically about like the awareness level for people and like what AI can do and capabilities and how important is that for people. But to your point, you go back and look at you know, any previous era, right? And that's what any professor will say. It's like go back and compare like previous eras to see. And it's like, man, this just doesn't feel right. It
But
just
also, it'll actually change the brain architecture
yeah.
as
Right.
well. How we communicate, our verbiage will change because we will start sounding more and more like Claude and ChatGPT. Kids are using it in school. Your ability to have elasticity of your brain to sort of read as opposed to reading on the digital has changed our brains.
Mhm.
How we process information, how creative we are, or whether we are just compliant because somebody has told us. There's a big difference between knowing a content and critically thinking and pushing back.
Absolutely.
We will not push back as much with AI as
Right.
opposed to just absorbing the information that we get. So the brain architecture is going to change. The social interactions will change. How we speak with each other will change. Soon, we will mimic, and AI will mimic us, and we will mimic them.
Right.
I think that's already happening.
It is already
It is already
happening.
Yeah.
happening.
It's
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
happening.
I don't know if
Yeah.
the academia likes it. Actually, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
one of the things that I'm feeling at Temple, at the university academia setup, academic setup, is a little bit of resistance to AI. Do you feel that, Kevin?
I think there is that fear that you're losing that ability to critically think.
The,
And I think that's what professors hold on to. And that's like,
right.
don't
Right.
lose the ability
The last bastion
to question,
critically think
yeah.
is being. Yeah, they're not sure whether the student's going to lose that ability.
I think there's a bit of a Luddite thinking in that.
Right.
We thought the
Right.
same way about when trains were there. People thought it will fry your brain and it's not good for you.
Yeah.
And every new technology is a threat.
Yeah.
And the vernacular of the learned who are so used to an old world, it seems like a threat to them and their way of thinking. But AI can also be, you can still be creative. Imagine Steve Jobs with Claude.
Right. Right.
That's what Michael Saylor is with AI.
He'd be the master prompter.
If you look at Michael Saylor, he will tell you he created multiple new companies and new products by asking AI to help him devise it. So he started with the creativity. Imagine Pablo Picasso with AI and asking 1,000 other questions and having so many apprentices really working with you, every possible artist ever created right next to you and having a conversation with them saying, what would you do here? What's the psychological underpinning? Imagine if I'm creating a work, but I also want to tie it to mathematics or astronomy. Now I don't have to go 18 months into I can just sort of find it, and then I can ask them, what are the cross currents? Is there any symmetry between the distance between here and the moon? And maybe I can create a piece of art that is similar to that. But now I can integrate multiple disciplines because I have access. We have 18 companies in the biotech space. So they're all in cancer research and obesity space. I was a chemistry major. I graduated with an education degree at Temple, but I was a biochemistry major as well. I don't remember the periodic table. I know nothing. But now, while my colleagues are talking about macrophages or HDAC6 or HDAC6 inhibition or suppressing this protein versus, I have to have AI right next to me, and I'm just as engaged with them because as they're speaking, I'm looking, and it's an iterative.
Yeah.
I can keep asking questions. After the call's over, I can keep asking, going deeper and deeper into rabbit hole. You couldn't do that 5 years ago.
Yeah,
sure.
You couldn't do that. And you either had your lane as an expertise, either there were the learned, and there are others who was just sort of waiting,
Learning,
looking from outside in.
Yeah.
Now you could, if you wanted to, the buffet is available. Anyone with curiosity. So curiosity, now, if you have it, you have more tools.
That's
And
true.
I think now it's a never-ending buffet of opportunity.
It makes
So
it fun.
Steve Jobs today would be lethal with AI.
Like
Imagine
Elon
what he
Musk
could have
is.
done. That's
Lethal with
exactly what
Grok.
Elon is.
Yeah.
Or Palantir, the guys at Palantir,
Yeah, Alex
Alex
Karp,
Karp and others.
Yeah.
So I think it's not an issue of, don't use GPS because you're not going to remember how to. Yes, there's some truth to that. It's fun to read
but what
maps
does it matter?
directly. Doesn't matter if you
Yeah.
have GPS everywhere.
Right.
My point is, what does it matter whether you used your natural sense of looking at the sun and where the shade is today to decide how to track and how to go, or whether you look at a map old-fashioned, or whether you have a memory, or whether you're using GPS, or better than GPS's Waze, where crowd people are telling you, don't go here, there's delay here.
Yeah.
To me, technology doesn't change it. Of course, the brain is different. I am somebody who is disabled when it comes to direction and very much challenged. I get lost everywhere. So it was a huge thing for me, democratizing in terms of how to get somewhere because I have now a tool that helps me get anywhere. Right.
It's amazing. It really is amazing. I mean, I don't understand. I couldn't agree more with you, Ajay. I think it is definitely. It's like trying to complain about not learning tables anymore. Do you remember learning tables?
Or memorizing
Memorizing
tables.
tables?
Times tables?
Right.
Or the
Times tables,
or-
yeah.
I mean, I think those
still got
as educators, there is something to be said about, whether let's use physical as an example. Just because you have to move doesn't mean you shouldn't move. There's something to be said about making sure your hips are mobile and you're getting up. And same thing with the brain.
Yep.
You have to train. If you don't read the newspaper, your brain changes, and it's the elasticity of it changes.
And like
So
your
neuroplasticity changes.
Your brain it moves
Evolves.
a lot until early 30s, I think, and then that's when you start.
But the neuroplasticity
less
of the brain,
plastic.
you start thinking differently. So of course you have to keep it fresh.
Yeah.
So I agree that if you can do analog as well as digital, but don't be the one who says, I'm not going to use the aid of technology.
Oh,
Why walk when you could be in a car going
car,
80 or 100 miles per hour?
Yeah. Especially, I mean, it's free.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, I say it's free, but it really is. Like, even if you don't have money, you have a phone. Like, I think it's 98% of homeless people have a phone.
Right.
You're going to have internet access. You're going to have the free version of all of these things out there. Like, you can.
I think go back to the metaphor, even if you have a Ferrari where you can go 100 miles per hour, still knowing how to walk and having the ability to walk is also important. So both are important. It's just, if you have an advantage using technology, don't be a Luddite.
Yeah,
why not take it?
Yeah, that makes sense.
True. No, I totally agree. I mean, how many courses have we been explicitly told, at least definitely Lynn Anderson's, that please do not use AI.
I think the challenge there, I wonder, if you're going to judge or grade people, you
Right.
want to be able to sort of say, did they do independent work? Was there maybe the question is
Original
not
work.
about whether or not you're using technology as much as, you know, not even original work as much as did you get, because I don't know, I have this debate with young people all the time with this generation when they say nothing is original. I don't mean that I do original work. I go, name a movie that is original, that is not Shakespeare or Bible.
Right.
Everything is a
Everything's built
plagiarism,
on
built on
everything.
other things.
Yeah.
So
Right.
the originality is taking what you have and then cooking it up and creating a soup with it.
Right.
And what's the difference between whether it's AI or internet? But there's something to be said about if you have 10 students and you're trying to give them grade, if everybody can just do a prompt and 2 seconds later
Yeah.
give an answer, what have they learned and how do we judge them in terms of effort, in terms of participation? I think there's something to be said about
Maybe
that.
we're teaching them wrong things, right? I mean,
Oh,
now
I'm sure.
the biggest emphasis I feel, I mean, the first year students, is on synthesizing what you've been asked to read. Like we have to read like 500 papers and synthesize what are they trying to
I'm
say.
telling you, you're doing
I
it
can
wrong.
I can I can get it. I can get ChatGPT to do it for me in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
I think look, when you were talking about early days education where you had to memorize
Tables and stuff.
multiplication tables and none would hit you if you got it wrong.
Yeah.
I grew up in that era. Um, but today, a calculator can do that for you. But how to think, why you think, is more
Right.
important than what.
What? True.
So,
True, true,
so,
true.
so the what
Absolutely.
becomes a commodity. Even the why is becoming commodity. But you still need to you need to work out that part of the brain that can be independent if everything goes dark. So you have to, I think just because you have it doesn't mean, just because you can make the coffee uh, by just pressing a button doesn't mean that you shouldn't learn what the process was.
Yeah,
You
I
should be
get the
both.
general theme
Yeah.
that, only because you can do it doesn't mean you should.
Yeah. By the way, you can do 10 more things now because technology is so advanced that things you can't even imagine doing. Today, anybody can create music.
Sure.
Anybody can create music, any language. You can use your voice and create movies. I mean, you
Art.
can
You can
create.
create art.
So that means you don't have to only be Spielberg to create movie. You can create a website. You can be a coder overnight. Remember, those were the
Right.
hardest jobs. You
Right.
can code now. So
I
there
don't
is
think.
something great about that. I think that it can democratizes everything.
Yeah, the coding is an interesting one because I'm close to that world a little bit, and it's interesting to see. It's almost like it's split. You either have the coders who are totally embracing the wave of technology and producing, and probably not working as hard either, to be completely
Right.
honest. And then you have the ones that are just aren't embracing it, and it's you would think there's an age difference, and there's not. Like I would think that older folks would be the ones not embracing AI, but I'm not seeing that like anecdotally for me.
Hmm.
And so you just have this group of this, I'm going to embrace it. I'm not going to embrace it, and it's to the will this matter in the future, or I don't think it's going to
It
matter,
could. I mean, look,
or
you can have man-made diamonds or nature-made diamonds, and humans have a nostalgia for nature-made.
yeah,
You could do modular construction, or you can
Or
do
you can,
handcrafted
yeah.
with people skills. Humans have nostalgia for that. I think even if AI generates beautiful art and beautiful music, I think there will still be part of the world that craves for human interaction and the
yes.
human created. So I think there will be an analog world that is not digital because we will crave it. When I was
Yes.
in 1980s growing up, Nifty 50s was a big deal because it was a nostalgia for the 50s, and then you had movies that were with James Dean and others that were kind of nostalgia for the 50s. So
Right.
humans, we have feelings, and we like the past as well as the future. Technology doesn't have to be your enemy, nor does it have to be your friend. It is there. It is an
Right.
enhancer. It's an accelerant. But these debates can be silly and superfluous if you don't need it to have them, because it's just a weapon. It's an
That's
armor
true.
or a shield if
Right.
you want to use it, but you
Right.
don't have to use it. You can be creative and not use it. And I
Yeah.
bet you some billionaire is going to be created who's going to use nothing but organic without any technologies.
Sure.
And
Sure.
and
Sure.
that's also going to be
Probably.
wanted.
probably.
We're going to crave it, actually.
I,
Humans will.
for me, it's the addiction side of technology
Hmm.
that makes it where that analog side gets a little lost in our conversations,
Hmm.
right? Like when I intentionally like have this notepad here,
Right.
and not a
Not
phone.
a or a iPad or something,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And even you look at some like the
Right.
best podcasts out there, they have that their iPad and they're just
Mhm.
taking notes there, and it's like,
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we have with the attention span of a fly these days,
oh
and there's a
gosh,
reason for that because our brains are conditioned for quick and, y- y- the podcast. You would think when everything is supposed to be 10-second clips.
yeah,
Why did podcasts become successful? Because there was so much of the 10-second that you then started craving the opposite,
Right. I mean, look
yeah. I
at
guess
Joe
that's probably
Rogan.
right?
true.
I mean,
So,
he's doing 3-hour
Yeah,
podcasts,
so
right?
when I have a show for 6ABC called Overheard, and the producers said, can you make them tighter? Can you make them quick answers? And I intentionally said, no, this is going to be long form conversations, where it's meandering but structured.
and it's
I don't take
genuine.
notes. And
Yeah,
what it is it's not. It's different. It's not good. Sometimes you just want get to the point. My articles, I write a column. My friend Lisa Roberts always says, I can't get through them. I put it on ChatGPT so I can give me what is AJ saying. Give me the summary. And I said, you can do that. And she is fighting me to make them shorter. And I'm not going to do that. These are meant to be
Long form.
long form.
Right.
These are meant to be policy heavy. My challenge is to make kale tasty
yeah.
and to talk about deeper topics without actually just, the subtitles, but instead dig a little bit, historical context, market trends of today, underlying reasons why, even if non-ideological based prism, you know, throw back to the Tim Russer type articles or George Will type articles, where even if you have an ideology, even if you have an agenda, even if you have a position, bit more layered as opposed to a quick, which we now do, which is we want
So 3 seconds.
Quick
three
hit.
seconds and
3
our
Yep.
seconds.
brains are moved on.
Yeah,
Mine are don't read. I'm not writing for a
yeah,
larger audience. If
Right.
there are two
Right.
people reading it, that's fine.
yeah,
I'm writing for myself.
yeah.
Sure.
That's us. I think we've had
Right.
20 viewers or something.
I guess so.
But there's going to be one person that clicks on this when we have 1 million, and they'll be like,
But in our
"This is
defense,
you only have
Kevin,
20 viewers."
in our defense, I must say that we have not taken the time to
We haven't created those clips.
right. We have not taken the time to popularize it as yet,
Yeah.
at least. Right?
Well, AI has done some good clipping for us, but
Sure.
I just got to
Sure.
connect it to all of
Right.
our socials.
No, I agree with Ajay. We are doing this for ourselves.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's why this is
if we
fun.
get audience, I think that'll be a bonus,
Yeah.
in my view.
I think
Yeah.
if you talk to bulk of your friends,
Right.
one of the reasons why I no longer do social engagements or parties, et cetera, is because I don't have the ability to give short form answers. If you ask me a question, I'm going to give you a long form answer.
Correct.
It's just how my brain is wired. And along the way, I realized that I am not, I'm a buzzkill at parties. That I can't just sort of have a basic conversation. And I engage in every type of conversation, political, religious, all those taboos that people try to avoid, because I don't see them as taboos. I just see them as data
Right.
points.
Yeah.
And that's not what you do in social circles. And so I am somebody almost at the spectrum where if I go to a party, I'm having these types of long conversations over a cigar, but I'm definitely not mingling with everybody.
That's what we need to
Yeah.
add.
So
We need to add a cigar
I
here.
need to
So,
add cigar
yeah.
here.
So,
That'd be great.
I think there, but that art of conversation, the long form conversation, policy heavy,
Right.
non-judgmental,
And
having
open.
violent clashes of ideological differences, but in a spirit of learning, not in a spirit of converting. That doesn't happen anymore. And I would challenge you to say in the past 3 months, how many conversations have you had? Obviously, you guys do this, but if you on a regular social basis, it's just not welcome. Nobody wants because you're told to not go into detail. Matter
And
of fact,
every
you mingle.
role,
The minute you start having 2 minutes, there's anxiety. That person says, "Well, I'm going to go circle."
Go circle
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, right? And that comes from the anxiety of now you're talking about things that are a little bit more layered. Let's keep it superficial.
COVID
Right.
didn't help that at all.
Made it worse.
Right?
Yeah.
Made it worse. Yeah, every role you have, there is taboo now. And I touched on this in our last show, but like I still find it strange that we're sitting behind microphones and we can have these conversations, but we can't have them with our best friends. We can't have them with our family. We can't have them at work.
Oh
We can't,
yeah,
you
it's
know.
become
So
impossible.
so how is it that putting yourself out there in the world, you could be less, like more engaged
Right. You're
in
right.
the
Remember we were talking about with Sunil, I guess,
yeah
that it's impossible to have a, let's say, a Thanksgiving dinner and have these kind of
yeah
conversation. You can't. You
yeah.
just can't. It just
I do, and
you
Well,
probably not the most
at the risk of cancel culture, but my friends and family know that
right.
about me, and um, I do it not because I'm so stubborn about my views, because my views change constantly. I'm data driven, and if tomorrow you tell me X, Y, Z, my ideological position on it will change because I now have a new lens or a new data point
I
that
don't think
shifts.
that's normal. Not normal in a bad thing. We were talking about
We're
it on
just
the way
talking about
here.
this drive up here
Yeah.
that you should be able to change your viewpoint in the face of new facts, in the
Hmm.
face of new
Maybe it's my
circumstances.
legal training. Every time a new evidence comes in,
Comes in,
you have to sort of
you
Yeah, it
change.
could
weigh
be.
it with the overall.
That could be.
Right.
But also, I think the idea of walking into a debate already convinced of a position is what we are now. You're already either woke or MAGA. You're left or right.
There are
You're
labels
Coke or
everywhere. Yeah.
Pepsi, or and then your job is to. And matter of fact, who you identify with becomes your identity. It becomes your job. It becomes how you make money. It becomes a tribe you have. And it's so. Even if somebody else gives you the cure for cancer, but if it's of the party, somebody who's on the other side of the party,
Yeah,
that's the enemy. You're not going to take the cure. You'd rather die than take the cure from that
that's
person. I
true.
think that started with the cancel culture, that started with the tribes, that started with the lowest denominator dividing us, as opposed to the higher denominator that unites us.
Right.
That makes sense.
Pretty heavy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
What do
Should
you
we go?
do for fun, Ajay?
Well, he goes to Thanksgiving. He goes to parties.
I,
You
no,
go.
I have a really rich circle of friends, from artists to business people to, you name it. Um, my fun is um, not the same fun as it used to be, but I'm usually around friends and uh, really good friends. Cigar is my poison,
Yeah. All
probably.
right.
I shouldn't admit that for the insurance company,
You don't
but
inhale.
I don't inhale. But
That's-
but I, in general, I'm blessed. I'm engaged with some of the
Some
smartest
smart
people in the
people.
world,
Yep.
and doing some of the most cutting edge things in
yeah.
terms of business and civic. So I'm living a life that is very much like a dream world
Yeah.
type of a
It
life.
sounds like it. I want to
Uh,
know a little bit more about that fellowship. Right. So you have what is that fellowship? Right. What does it look like? You look for these kids, and then how do you help them along?
that's interesting. We're um, every weekend this month of March, we're doing interviews. So around 500 or so
Mm,
applications come in, and out of that, maybe 70 advance to the interview round. And this year, 68 are being interviewed for an hour by a panel. Imagine being a 10th grader.
yeah.
But these are not like typical 10th graders. Imagine Kobe at 10th grade playing basketball, or LeBron at 10th grade.
Sure.
These are the best and the brightest. And the conversations that they're having, if you're talking about Iran, it will be layered and layered and layered because they are well read, they're hyper smart. These are the folks that are coveted at Stanford and Harvard, et cetera. And they're, even when they go there, the top of the class, et cetera. So those are the kids, just to set the
Right.
stage. So the interview is not a scripted interview. It's much more of a sparring session. I'm not looking to see if they had the right answer. I'm looking for a thought process.
Correct.
Every kid at that level of resume, with perfect GPA, 1,600 SATs, etc., they all have 13 nonprofits that they have started. So it's hard to tell how much of that is performative, how much of that is needed for the school to get to the next level. So what we're looking for there is, but you can still, in those conversations, like what we're just having right now, you can find out the ones for whom it's not just a means to an end, but a sense of
They're really
passion and a
passionate
purpose.
about it.
Or
Right.
that crazy kid who's into robotics so much that is now giving up on grades because he's so into this. So we're looking for those folks. Of course, we miss some of them because grades are important. The writing, the
Sure.
personal statement, the letter of recommendations, all of these things that come in before they get an interview. But the interview process is where weed out. And I'm sure we get it wrong, but look, some of the kids that we have who are now fellows, several years into their lifetime fellowship, many of them have. One of our fellows, for example, took a year out of Stanford, raised money from Kleiner Perkins, and is now creating a second company. One of our kids, working for Palantir, Alex Karp, took 2 years out of his undergrad at Penn, led a team, not part of a team, but led a team that created for Palantir, for the largest health system in Chicago, an AI tool that prevents the spread of sepsis. So we're talking about kids like that. These are kids who are riding dragons, right? So we're hatching dragon eggs. They are the dragons. So it's the trick is to find that mutant. And out of that 190, how many of them are the next jobs or the next president or the senators? I have no doubt we have several senators in the mix. We have few, U.S. congressmen or women in the mix. I believe we have many CEOs in the mix, many nonprofit executives. But is there Mother Teresa in the mix? Is there Gandhi in the mix? Is there Mandela in the mix? Is there Jobs in the mix? Is there Albert Einstein in the mix? I do. I think,
Yeah.
how many out of that 190? I think 30 are right now potential candidates. Out of that 30, how many of them will make it? Maybe zero. But I have 30 that are real
You
snipers.
said this
They're
is a
real snipers.
long-term bet.
But these are real
Yeah.
snipers, and you look at them and what they're doing already at a young age, the way they think. And this is 2015, Caleb Clothier, one of our early Germination fellows. He went to Yale back then because Yale was the top research university in quantum. Nobody was talking about quantum computing in 2014, 2015. He went to Yale because he wanted to be in an industry that was not here today, will not even be here the next 20 years, but he wanted to go into it earlier. We're talking about kids like that.
Yeah.
They're just different.
How do you even think about that? Like, I'm 16 and I'm like, oh, I get to drive.
How do you get in the brain of a Picasso? How do you get in the brain of a Michael Jordan? I mean, they're just mutants. The trick is to find those
Well,
mutants.
let me ask you this question,
that's
Ajay. Sounds like to me, um, I mean, these kids are going to be successful,
With or without us.
right?
They don't need us. So when they ask us, some of the kids during the interview say, well, how would you describe Germination? What do you think Germination is? I say, we're an organization about nothing. I explain to them, let me explain what we're not, and then I'll explain what we are, and you decide whether or not you still want to join. What we're not. We're not an organization that teaches you how to be a leader. We identify, and it's a platform, those who already have leadership traits. So we're not going to teach you how to be a leader. Okay, what are we not? We're not an organization that gives you tools or resources or gives you an initiative, say, why don't you tackle this project or that project? Then what the hell are we? If we're not giving you tools, we're not telling you what to do, we're not teaching you how to do it, what do? We're merely a test kitchen where the world's best chefs come together. There is no oven, there are no ingredients. The hope is that these best chefs will come together, create the ovens, create cooking. Doesn't have to be the traditional recipes, generate, and hopefully not only enrich and feed each other and have a party, but feed humanity. This is a project where we're not telling them what crop to cultivate, how to be farmers, to train them, to give them equipment, but it's a fellowship that identifies the best and the brightest, connects them for a lifetime, charges them up with a sense of purpose larger than their own for a duration longer than their collective lifespan. This is no different than the NBA, where the best and the brightest play basketball. No different than a hospital where the best and the brightest come together to serve the patients. No different than the Manhattan Project or the Lunar Project. This is an old formula. Few lead many, bring them together, give them a reason to collaborate, and all of a sudden good things come out. That's how Apple was formed. That's how Palantir was formed. That's how all of these companies are formed. So that's how bands are formed. That's how concerts are created.
Wow.
So what we have done is merely that. Now, of course, Penn Medicine does a boot camp for them. And if you look at the week-long boot camp, it's Drew Weissman, the Nobel laureate, the head of the Cancer Center. It's who's who at Penn Medicine, 10 years in a row, each of them come in, right? There are amenities.
So they get access.
No, they have access. They do have access. We accelerate things, but we don't give them. So, for example, the fellows who get frustrated, they say, we have this idea. We want to do X, Y, Z. Can you connect us, or can you give us donations? Can you give it? We said, well, are you giving us a project, or are you doing a project, right? Because the idea is, what we want is a self-starter who says, for example, a group of our fellows who did this, they realized so many people are dying unnecessarily from heroin addiction. But there's Narcan, but people don't know how to use Narcan to save a family member. So they took it upon themselves to learn how to use Narcan, worked with Penn, and then went out to neighborhoods and taught family members how to use Narcan.
Wow.
That's an example, right? So many people die in Philadelphia. If you have a heart attack and you're not near a hospital, your survival rate is around 7%.
Sure.
Okay. But imagine if every high school student, when they graduate, has to learn how to do CPR, tourniquet, Heimlich maneuver, etc. Now you have everybody around you is a lifesaver, right? Imagine, so our kids went to Harrisburg, to lobby Harrisburg, to make that a high school graduation requirement.
Oh, wow.
Then you had kids who sort of thought about using technology where you can have an app that immediately alerts people that somebody's having a shock and a peanut allergy or something. There were kids who, now, did that become their full time? No, because these are creative kids who are starting one project and they go to something else. But that's what we have. We have folks, who have tremendous talent, connect to others who have tremendous talent with different levels of interest. Now imagine growing up together in over 50 years, where the best and the brightest, with the connectivity of Philadelphia, who have now seen the side, the challenges of Philadelphia, poverty, etc., where it's not an abstract thing. It's not charity, but instead it's their community. They work there. They thought about it. And at the same time, we're not making them feel bad about creating a new technology, making money, running for office. These don't have to be mutually exclusive things.
Right. Wow.
Charity doesn't have to be at the end of the year where you give money. It should be part of the integrated into your life.
Totally agree with you. When I was 6-7 years back when I retired, and I'm like, what do I do with myself? I could go and volunteer my time in the soup kitchen, and it's a great thing to do, right? But it doesn't have a multiplier effect, right? So I wanted to do something which has a multiplier effect. For one unit of effort that I put in, what comes out at the other end is 5 times or 6 times. And there is nothing better than helping a small business succeed, because that changes not only their lives but the lives of the family, lives of the next coming generation, and so on and so forth. Right? So you are doing something similar as
No,
well.
I actually, my colleagues don't agree with this when a young law student comes in and says, especially the top tier law students who have the top grades, who are being coveted by large law firms with big salaries, but they have a sense of purpose.
Right.
They want to work instead in a nonprofit, and they want to do meaningful work, at the community level with individuals, one by one. And it's a wonderful life to do that. But then I think about the talent that young person has. And if they had resources at their hand, an entire $1 billion+ revenue law firm, now you can fund 100 nonprofits while you're still doing all of those things. Right. So the multiplier effect, the scaling effect of that's what the internet has taught us, and that's what is that certain things can scale faster if you have the ability. So both are meaningful and purpose-driven lives.
Right.
But if you can do, instead of shooting one target at a time, just do a spray approach of changing the world, why wouldn't you do that?
Absolutely.
And there's some people who, quite frankly, I think it's a waste of their talent. If they had the ability to change humanity in a meaningful way, but instead they were just, helping one bee at a time instead of changing the whole climate.
That makes sense.
Of course, I'm in the minority. All of my colleagues vehemently disagree with my worldview on that. They say, absolutely, because they think that I'm just snuffing that one person's passion for that community work. I'm certainly the minority in that, but I do believe that. I think that young person who has that kind of love for the community, that kind of passion for individuals, imagine if they have the ability to, they're the ones who should be running Goldman Sachs, not the selfish guy who eventually only makes money.
That's a good point.
You recruit them to be the president.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a good spot to end it.
Great.
I appreciate you having you on. It's been a blast.
Thank you.
And best of luck with everything that you're doing. Yeah, I think it's great work.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Thank you. It's work.
You've got the right pants for the podcast. I promise.
Thank you. I came directly from the gym. Yeah, exactly. Good. Thank
Appreciate
you,
it. Thank you so
gentlemen.
much.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.